talk again about this spraying without orange peel. Seems like there's a lot of interest in this, and there's a lot of subject matter on this. How to get it to lay down perfectly smooth. I'm just going to clarify that real quick. When you're painting a perfectly flat panel like this on a VW bus, you're going to see some degree of orange peel. Now, you've seen these show cars where they have no orange peel on a bus like this. And I'm not talking about anything but a VW bus. They're the flattest thing in the world. There's nothing like this. You see one in a show and you go, man, that one doesn't have any orange peel. It's because they color sanded and buffed it. You know, they did a really good job color sanding because there's always a little tiny bit in there. So anyway, let's talk about again a couple of ways to talk about this. Is one way is spraying in a booth. Okay, so if you're spraying in a booth, it's a lot easier to spray in a booth than it is to spray in the field or at your house or whatever. When you're in a booth, you can turn that gun up to, I would highly suggest, if you're using a good gun, of course, Technopro Light, LS400, Iwata, and SD Iwata, Supernova they call it, or the SATA 4 or 5000. Okay, you can turn it up to full pressure on the mount, because the principle is to get as much air as possible, to atomize the paint. Paint comes out of the gun in little dots, okay? So little dots are all over your, and what the thing is, you want a finer amount of dots. So the finer the dots are coming out of that gun, the less potential you have for orange peel. Because what really causes orange peel is the dots not connecting together quite perfectly. So, if you understand that, that's the principle of what you're trying to do. Now, playing with gun settings, I found, okay, so my gun settings are going to be a little bit different than probably yours are. So if I give you the exact gun settings, I did give some gun settings, and I got guys going, oh man, you never spray at less than 29 pounds, or I never spray less than 2 bar. Okay, well, if I was in a spray booth all day long, I would never spray less than 2 bar or 29 pounds. I would always use everything full pressure. Okay, but if you're in a garage, you have to use totally different settings, because if you run at 29 pounds, you're going to get halfway through the panel and you're not going to be able to see to do the job. So part of the job is being able to see, especially when you're on a flat panel like this. If you're spraying something round, if it's got just a hair of orange peel in it, you won't be able to see it. See, like the roof of this bus, I did not use any. This has not been color sanded. This hasn't been buffed. Nothing. And it's kind of dirty right now. Let me clean it off a little bit. So I cleaned up this little area right here to kind of give you an idea. There is absolutely no sign of orange peel in that finish. That has not been color sanded and buffed. And the reason it looks so good is because it's round. So that little slight bit of roundness on any panel, if it's just, it doesn't even need to be very much at all. Just, this is more than some. If it's just a little bit round, you're not going to see that orange peel. On this panel, you will. You can spray it with exactly the same pressure, exactly everything the same. And because it's almost, or on a concave panel, you'll see it too. So, flat panels are really hard to paint. So that's the key thing is, like, if you're painting a VW bus, you really need to have your gun settings really good and get that orange peel to almost be nothing, and then so you can do an easy job of color sanding and buffing. So again, I'm going to go over some of the materials and spray gun. I use the Technopro Light. If you're spraying in a garage at home, you can spray as little as 16 pounds with this gun and still get a really, really smooth, almost an orange peel finish if you're using a 4-to-1 clear. Some of the 4-to-1 clears are better than others. It's Really hard to get a good 4-to-1 clear. I'm going to tell you some brands real quick that come out really nice. The best one for me is Drew Carriage in Montclair, California. Has their own house formula. Okay, it's an own house clear, and it's called their multi-clear, and it lays down and flows beautiful. Okay, some of the other ones you can use that are available that are better than others. 5-star is not too bad. It's not my favorite for sure, but it's one that you can get a pretty nice finish with. It's decent hard clear. Trying to think, the other one that's even probably a little bit better than even 5-star is Matrix. So yeah, Matrix 4-to-1 clear. I've also used the 2-to-1 clear and from Matrix, and you can get a really nice finish with that with this gun at even 15 pounds. So 15 or 16 pounds, because your pressure is going to vary a bit as you spray, as your compressor builds pressure and loses pressure. Unless you have a really, really big compressor and a giant line coming into this thing, then it doesn't vary as much. Like if you're using the larger fittings and all that stuff. You guys in the spray booth, you're gonna have a different set of rules. Okay, crank it up, blow it on, get it nice. That's not hard to do in a booth. Okay, I'm talking more to the guys at home who are trying to do this on their own. So gun settings. What I'm just going to do real quick, what my gun settings were for painting outside. I'm just saying, if I hypothetically, let's say I painted this outside, it would be 16 pounds, fan all the way out, turned in a quarter turn, and or I'd even leave it all the way out. It doesn't matter that much. And the material at 2.5 to 3 turns. 2.5 maybe on the first coat, 3 turns on the second, third. And that's spraying outside. Okay, that's hypothetically I'm spraying outside. If I'm in a booth, I'm saying this is for Drew Carriage Clear. I would use the same gun, and I would have it pretty much almost wide open on material. I probably have 4 turns out, and I think it only goes 6 turns out. I would use the fan straight open and at 29 pounds, and I might adjust it as I go, because it's all about feeling what you're doing. So there's a lot of the reason I'm making more videos on this is because there's so much involved with trying to get it to come out perfectly smooth. It's all about the thickness of the material. It's all about the distance you are from the work. It's all about, there's so many different variables that go into this. So I'm trying to make sure I cover them all. So at those settings, I would be about this far away, which is about 6 inches to 8 inches, somewhere in there. You're always varying a bit as you spray. If you're really good, you try to not variate. That's the trick. Watch the gunman. That guy is like a machine. He's exactly the same distance the whole time he's spraying. The guy's pretty good. So I mean, I'm pretty good in the booth too, but I'm not going back to going spraying in booths anymore in a shop, every day. I used to be a painter in a body shop, and I'm not going back to that. So unfortunately, I'm just teaching you guys the stuff that I know so you can do this at home. So anyway, those are kind of gun settings for at home. If you're if you're using a 2-to-1 clear, now those clears that are 2-to-1 are higher solids than the ones that are 4-to-1. So I'm talking about a medium solids 4-to-1 clear at those gun settings. Now, if you're at home doing 2-to-1 clear, so let me give you an example. So let's say you say, I'm going to use really good material. I'm going to use Glycerin 2-to-1 clear, and I would not recommend doing that at home, and because you're just not going to be able to turn it up high enough to get that to atomize. I had a guy comment on that and said, hey, I used 2-to-1 clear, and glycerate, and hey, those gun settings you're talking about didn't work. Well, of course not. I mean, you're talking about a way thicker material. Now, typically, I do not thin the 4-to-1 clears because they're already thin enough. Now, if you look on your label and it allows you to thin the clear, if the label allows you to thin it, that always helps. So if you're looking to get it smooth, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of, when you thin the clear and over thin the clear, if you thin it just a little bit too much, even if you put the same amount of coat, if you put more coats on or whatever to compensate for it, thinning that clear takes something out of it that it loses its longevity. So if you go too much, so if you go with what's recommended on the label, usually you're okay. If you're trying to get more than that, then you might get a smoother finish, but you're going to sacrifice on the other end, which is it's not going to last. So, because like I said, it's all about breaking it up finer and getting it to lay down, smooth. So let's talk about coats. What is a medium wet coat and what is a full wet coat? Okay, so usually you put your first coat on as a medium wet coat. You don't want to go too dry, because if you go too dry, basically a dry coat is, okay, when you spray it on and the dots don't connect quite together, or they just barely connect together, and it makes a heavy orange peel looking finish. That's a dry coat. Not good. If you make your first coat dry, you're going to have orange peel in your finish for sure. Because if you're spraying too far away, like if you're spraying back here, if you're the kind of person you have to spray further away, then you have to narrow your fan, because you want the paint to project more onto the work that you're spraying. So you can do that. I mean, some guys run narrow fan and spray further away, but usually you're going to have problems with overlap, where you're overlapping. You're going to have like a heavy area here, and then when you overlap across it, you're either going to have too much heaviness in your overlap, or you're going to have too dry of an overlap, and it will run. So those are things to know. So those are the type of problems you can have spraying. Let me think here again. So basically, the types of coats there's a medium wet coat, first coat. Your second coat should be a full wet coat, and then third coat, full wet coat. Now, what is a full wet coat? And okay, when you go make your pass across, okay, the dots connect together as you're spraying. When it's a little bit past them just connecting together, where they're flowing together just a little bit, and not puddling, because if you puddle, you'll see it kind of, when it hits there, it kind of starts to move a little bit as you're putting it on. You'll see the material start to kind of move on the surface. That's puddling. You don't want to puddle. You want to be just right to the point where you're spraying a full wet coat, which is the dots connecting together and just a hair. I mean, I'm trying to, it's hard to, if you know how to do it, it's easier than it is to explain it. Where the stuff is just getting together and a little bit past that, to where it's puddling just a hair, just not really puddling, but just like it's a little bit heavier than just the dots connecting together. So that's how you want to be spraying it as you go. So there's a few things to do. Your gun settings are one. Your technique, which is spraying it right to the edge where the dots are connecting together, and it's a little bit past them just connecting together, and then working that panel, and then overlapping 3/4 of what you did. Or even you can go a little bit drier, which is more of a medium wet coat, and you can go across and make more passes per. So in other words, instead of going 50% overlap, which is your standard base coat spray, you go 75% overlap, or even more. Maybe you go to 80% or 85%, and you go even faster, and you go back and forth and build it up slowly. That's another technique that you can use to get more orange peel, especially if you're spraying at home, that type of thing. Where the trick is to layer it on slow, but get it on wet. Okay, so when I'm saying get it on wet, let's say you're too far away, it's not going to go on wet. The material is atomizing with the air, and it's going to dry a little bit before it hits the surface. So if that's happening, fat orange peel. Okay, it needs to be the right distance away, layered on. Okay, and then that will give you the less orange peel or no orange peel in your finish. So, along with having it as thin as possible, without compromising the material. So I'm not telling you to thin your clear. I'm telling you, read the label. If your label says 5% max, put 5% in it. That's going to help, especially at low pressure. If it says 10% max, put 10% in. Don't put 15. If it says 10, put 10. Don't put 15. You put 15 in, you're going to compromise your finish. You'll get a smoother finish. It'll look better, but it won't last. So, that's up to you. If you're going for a show finish and you don't care, it's going to sit in the garage. Hey, thin it more. Then you're just but you're going to compromise your work, and then someday you're going to go, man, that finish is failing, and I wish I would have done that. And so much work to go and remask it all off and take it all apart, sand it down, paint it again. It's at that point. So 3 or 4 years later. So anyway, those are some of the ideas and techniques to think about when you're spraying to get no orange peel, or very little orange peel on the sides, and basically no orange peel. You can get that finish. That finish was done at 14 or 16 pounds of pressure, and I'm not going to say where it was done, but it was done at 16 pounds of pressure, and it looks that smooth. So it can be done. It's hard to do. Okay, it's a lot easier if you can crank it up. If you're in a booth, crank it up. Don't be shy with the pressure. Get it up to the full amount for HVLP. Now, guys tell me the other thing is you want to use a TE20 on this gun. So I didn't go over this stuff. I'm going to say this again. This is a HV30. TE20s actually have some areas, from what I've read, maybe I'm wrong, but from what I've read on the approval sheet, some areas in California, the TE20 is not considered HVLP. Because you look at this spray gun, it doesn't say anywhere on the spray gun itself HVLP. Okay, the spray gun does not say HVLP. It's this cap that sprays that says HVLP. And in California, if you're spraying in California in a booth, you need to make sure that your gun is HVLP compliant. Because if you ever get somebody came in and saw your gun and says, hey, that's a TE20, you're in this area, that's not an approved HVLP, you're going to get a pretty huge fine. So that's why I have a HVLP air cap on here. Does the TE20 work finer? I can't say that I know, but I suspect it does. I can't say that no. I've used one in another area, and yeah, they're a little bit finer. It's such a small amount that, to me, it didn't really make that huge amount of difference. A lot of guys say it does. I mean, it probably does when you're at 2-bar in a booth. It probably makes a bit of difference. So I can't say that I've tested it that way. So anyway, that's just a couple things. It's like a little reply video to some of the guys that are watching these orange peel videos, because I'm getting a lot of up and down. Some guys are real thumbs up, and the guys are like, oh, that's a joke. But I do know what I'm doing. I've done this for 35 years, and I'm not working in body shops anymore. I won't do it. Screw them. This is what I say to you guys that are getting body shop, that come in the body shop and go, hey, what is this little piece of dirt right here? This is the finger. Okay, for that little piece of dirt right there, that's the finger. That's why I don't do body shop anymore, because I'm tired of the little crap. Oh, look at this. You got this little piece of dirt, and I'm going to have to repaint the whole freaking hood because you're such an asshole. Whatever. Screw you. You're not getting my work. Let some other idiot do it. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys in the next video.